Okay, so at this point in the demonstration, I would make a suggestion that you do a file save as, because we've gotten to a place where, this is kind of like a good archive for, your testing with all of your messages showing up on the screen and everything. So what I would probably do, excuse me, at this point is I would do file save as, and save it in the exact same directory, and I'd save it as test2, so that you know that this is the second iteration of what it is that you're trying to do. Okay, and that way if you mess anything up really badly, you at least have some other, previous save point to go back to. And to be safe, I'm going to close test1 so I don't accidentally work off of it. And then you could go from here. And the next logical step would be to do something, really simple, like to start printing images to the screen. And I think we should do some cleanup now in test2. Let's get rid of the stuff that we don't need to actually see on the screen, like echo, this is a bad file type, and all of that stuff. So let's kind of clean that up, and let's make sure that all of our curlies line up. So this one, actually, this would probably need to come in. So this is a first if statement, and it ends here, and then it picks back up as an else, and then we have another if statement that's nested inside of it, and that's our problem, is we need to just tab everything in, and that way we can see that this if statement is nested inside of this other if statement. Okay, so that's a good way to go ahead and clean everything up. This would be a place for you to go back and fix all your comments and make sure that everything makes sense to you. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of these these print R's. And then now we've got something that's like pretty clean, and I don't need pre anymore, because pre is only for if we're going to do print R to the screen. And so now what I could do is down here, if we wanted to just run a really quick test, and we could go ahead and make some image tags show up. And again, this is going to be something that's like quick and dirty. And if you want to be really simple about it, we can copy our for each image list as file name. We can copy that because we're going to have to run it through a loop. Okay, and let's do something where we just make something show up on the screen. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to end my PHP and then start my PHP back up again, because I want to just be able to print directly to the screen. I want to be able to print an image. So I can do my img src equals, and then we're going to leave that empty for a second, and then we'll do alt text, but we're going to leave it empty. Okay, and then I'm going to put a break tag in between, just something really, really simple. Okay, and in fact, if you wanted to do this as a list, you could do this as a list, whatever. Right now we're just getting something to show up on the screen. Okay, and so for the image source, this is where we'd put some PHP, and we would echo file name. But remember, we can't just echo file name, because it needs a pathway. And this is where having these paths up here would actually be a really good thing. You have to decide, which path do you really want? Do you want the medium-sized picture, the small picture, the large picture? What do you want? And so what we want to be able to do is build out this pathway. And so if you want to be able to not have to type this every single time, this is where we're going to do some refactoring. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the album target gallery like this, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new variable. I'm going to come up here, and then we're going to say something like set current or currently selected galleries pathway. We'll call it current gallery path. Okay, just keep it simple, and then we'll make it set so that it looks to the album and then to the target gallery. Okay, and that's pretty straightforward. And then later we can decide down below if we want large, medium, small, or whatever. Now we've used that pathway somewhere else, so I'm going to copy this current gallery path, And I'm going to see, like for instance, where we have image list, I'm going to go ahead and substitute it there because we can. Okay, this is called refactoring. And let's see if we used it again. In fact, we did. Use it right there. Okay, and then again, we're going to use it down here, right there. And we're going to concatenate it. Okay, and then we need to say medium. Let's just say we're going to print the medium size picture. Just because, why not? And then we're going to concatenate. We'll save it. And let's do a quick test and let's see how this actually looks now. And don't forget, you can't just hit refresh. You have to actually go up here and change the file name and see what shows up. And my goodness, there they are. Okay. And remember, we chose the medium size. So maybe that's still a little bit too big. So you could always just go back into your script to do a test and you could change this to small, save it, refresh it, and you see, there we go. And this could be in a list, and now you can start to see maybe how you could start to build like a lightbox gallery or whatever. Okay, and it's going to grab your pictures and it's going to be able to populate something for you. Now, something that we should go ahead and deal with while we're talking about, cleaning things up and kind of doing best practice and that kind of stuff is, let's look at what would happen if we had mistyped a pathway. Let's say that we accidentally mistype responsive design and call it responsive designs. And let's save that and see what happens. And we get a page that's chock full of errors. Well, that's not something that you would actually want to happen on your user's screen. So there are some different ways that you could deal with it, but the way that is probably the smartest way, instead of just suppressing errors where nothing would come up, what we'd want to do is come up with something in the event that error should occur. And the best way to deal with that would be to make sure that before we actually scan the directory, for instance, that would be the first place to make sure that we test for the path that we're going to be scanning. Actually, we should probably, because this function that ultimately we're going to make is going to be able to access large, medium, and small folders, we should be able to make sure that all three of those pathways exist. So right here, before we actually build the image list, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create an if statement. And you'll notice the reason that we don't need to create the if statement up here is because up here so far all we've been doing is just assigning variables. So the variables that we're assigning are ones that we're actually saying, okay, this does equal this does equal this. So those aren't going to fail. Where it might fail though is if we go to scan a directory that does not exist. So let's do this. We're going to say if. Okay, we're going to wrap this whole thing in an if statement. Let's come down to the very end, and let's say inside the end of this PHP here, we'll put the ending if statement, or the ending, okay, and then we'll say else. I'm just going to go ahead and put the else condition. We're going to say echo the selected gallery is not available, or something like that. Okay. And in that way, at least you've got a nice message that shows up on your screen. In fact, you could even put it in some paragraph tags or something like that. All right. So that way you've got some kind of conversation dialogue going on with your user. So in the if statement, what we're going to do is we're going to look to see if a file exists. And as you can imagine, the way that PHP is very intuitive, the function is called file exists. And file exists as a function will check to see if it's a file or a directory that exists. So it's not just a single file. It's also, it'll check to see if the directory as well, if the thing exists. Okay. So what we want to do then is we want to get our current path. All right. We want to say if file exists, and then we want to say dot large. First of all, I guess we can go with large, and then we can also say and, because we want it to be an and statement, not an or statement. We want all three of these things to exist. So we're going to say and I could either put this on one big long line, or the other thing that I could do is drop this down. Okay, and this is okay. The white spaces is not a problem. So I could say medium here, and I can come out here and say and again, 2 ampersands. Oops. And then lastly we'll put small. Okay, so as long as these paths actually exist, then we'll actually do all this stuff where we scan the directory and run through the loop and blah, 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 right? Otherwise, down here at the bottom, we are going to do a default behavior, print this to screen if the directories cannot be found. Okay. All right. So we're going to do that, and now let's run this, refresh. And now instead of getting all those ugly error messages, you see it says the selected gallery is not available. Okay. Much nicer way of dealing with it. And then we can go back up here, and for now we can change responsive designs to responsive design and refresh, and there we go. Okay, so that's another thing that we need to go ahead and do. All right, and so now let's go ahead and let's go back down here now that we've got some error checking going on, and let's see about doing something a little bit more interesting with this image down here. One of the things that we can do is grab it as a random image. We don't have to list all the images right here. So to do that, I'm actually going to come up here before this. I'm not going to get rid of this because I might use it later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start some new PHP tags. End them. Going to end them, and I'm going to just paste some stuff to get started here. And I put a comment and it says grab random image for IMG. And then we're going to use a function called array_rand. And what it does is it returns a numeric key integer. So I put this little echo. This is how the random key is pulled. And then what I'll do here is I'm going to just set a key. Let's call it random key equals, and then I'll use the array rand function on image list. Okay, because that's our image list that we're using. So if I want to, right now all it's doing is storing it. So if I want to see what that key is on the screen, I can echo it. So let's save that, and let's do a quick test and hit refresh. And you see here it says this is the random key pulled, and it says 8. All right. If we were to do a print R, we would be able to see which image, in fact, that was. So real quickly, so that we can separate the pictures that are down below it, I'm just going to put an HR between these two PHP sets of code. And I'm also going to do, let's see, before the HR, I'm going to do some pre-tags. And I'll do end pre, and then inside of the pre-tags I'm going to do a print R on image list, just to remind us, in case you've forgotten, to remind us what's inside of image list at this point. And so we'll hit return or refresh, and then you see, okay, the random key that's being pulled is 3, and you'll see that 3 is the colored bricks. And so now if we were to display that image, I want to close that because I keep clicking on it. If we were to display that image at this point, the way to do that from what we've got so far is to, I'm just going to paste it, is to create a new thing called image, a new variable called image, and we are going to grab that random key out of image list, okay? And so that's just the assignment right now. So if I wanted to create, here I'm just going to copy this image down here with the break tag. I'm going to paste it as HTML, right? So that means after the PHP tag, and I'm going to grab, instead of file name here, because we've created this thing called image, I'm going to, instead of file name, I'm going to grab image, okay? And then let's just go ahead and save that. And you see it tells me that 11 is the stained glass, and in fact it is pulling the stained glass. Every time I hit refresh, it's pulling key 7. Key 7, it says, is the grass through perforations, and it keeps working.